I was up on Burchard Road this morning and came upon a woman getting her mail. And I stopped and opened the door and I said, "Ma'am, can you tell me where the shooting took place on Tuesday?" Mrs. Lee, Eloise Lee, is a former secretary to the comptroller of the local Coca-Cola bottling plant. And she said, "Yes, I know about that." I said, "Do you know where it is? And do you know the party on whose property the killing of Donna Allen took place?" And she said, "I don't know him, but I can tell you where it is. Should I? Would you like just me to go with you?" So she came around and rose high into our wonderful yellow Hummer and put her mail and her Time Tree Press in the slot there in the door. And we went down the road, wound around to the right. And at the very end of Burchard Road on Saudi Mountain, a heavily wooded area, is a little circle. And at the end, at the desperate end of that little circle, is a very steep driveway. And that driveway is the home of Tim Blaylock. So here now, think of the fleeing person, Donna Allen, in her car, and on her right is a man. We don't know from press reports who that man is, but he's fighting for his life right now, having taken a bullet from a courageous Red Bank police officer who is trying to bring the peace, right, and trying to save his own life in the use of his service weapon. So Mrs. Lee and I roared up very heavily in our mighty yellow Hummer up the hill of Mr. Blaylock's property and went along a gravel path past a barn and some fences in a wooded area to the open esplanade of his house. And as I looked on the right there, I could say, well, that's where I think she probably went, right? She was fleeing. We don't know that she knew these people at all, but she was trying to get away. Miss Allen, Donna Allen, in her late 30s, and you can see her mugshot at Chattanooga.com. The story of a police killing in circumstances about which I, David Toulis, your host here at 92.7, raised the question. There are many questions, of course, but there are some main ones. And we want to ask about this killing. One more state action, one more holy, righteous action by the powerful against those who, because they're weak by definition, since we worship power today and we don't worship God much, the powerful are always right. And in this case, we have the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, the Sheriff's Department, and others who are controlling the scene, right? The scene of the crime. Now, the crime, when you hear that word, you're supposed to understand to be that of the citizens who were shot, where they met their denouement after, in a very ugly and angry and lawless way, fled officers in a late night chase up the mountain, up 111, a very steep ride. You have to go on that highway into a lower gear. And they took, as we find out, that they took the turn at Jones Gap Road and then hooked a left and descended slowly that part of the mountain, the plateau, towards Saudi Daisy. And Burchard Road is a dead end. And they together, Donna at the wheel, gunning the engine, the lights flashing in her eyes through her rearview mirror, went up the hill there, past the stone mailbox, the stone encased steel mailbox of Mr. Blaylock, and cut right. She cut right through a wooded area. And as we are to understand, without, of course, the help of Mr. Blaylock, who was not very helpful and not very gracious to me in my making my inquiries as to the topography and terrain of the death scene. The woman in the car went right across in front of his yard, and in about 150 yards from where we stood there this morning, Mrs. Lee, listening in as we chatted, found the end of her escape. Donna Allen dead, hit by a bullet from a Red Bank police officer who was on paid vacation this morning, and a second shot through the car, hitting the man in the seat on the right. He's also called a passenger. She's called a driver and operator. They were in what's called a vehicle, and the man fighting for his life right now at this very moment is called a passenger. So the the killing is one that we want to know about. We want to know if the elements of police reform come into view here. And yes, they do, because Chuck Wexler and other reformers, he being from the Police Executive Research Forum, having published an excellent volume on this topic of reform, says that reform encompasses three simple, amazingly simple and wonderful local economy ideas. And those are time, space, and cover. And here we have in view now, in the killing of this woman, the rejection of these concepts. And cover is the thing that stands out in my mind the most. That's, I guess, point number two. Well, point number one is, why did Sheriff Hammond allow this to happen, allow this chase to happen? Number one, at high speeds, past the speed limit. And number two, why did the sheriff allow the use of a corporation police officer, Red Bank police officer, to kill an American, who has done nothing worthy of capital punishment? Donna Allen did nothing worthy of death. She did nothing worthy of death. She may have been foolish. She may have had a DUI in the record. Maybe she had a bit too much to drink that evening, Monday night. It is a early Tuesday morning encounter, an aggressive encounter over a traffic infraction under Title 55. Question number one, why did the sheriff allow it? And question number two is, why was that key element of reform, the use of cover, not used? Now, you ask, what do you mean topography and terrain? Well, if you're in a car and you're off the road, you're not going to get far, especially if you're being chased by several police cars, all of whom are giddy with excitement to catch the prey, right? To be part of it, to be in the middle of the fray. That's what police officers and deputies live for. That's the highlight of the week. The thing worth, well, you could say worth writing home about if you want to fall into a cliche. But that is what they're there for. They're there for public safety, right? That's the ostensible goal of their employment is public safety and enforcement of the statutes and keeping the peace as well. The terrain is trees, okay? And if you're in a car off the road, there's only so far you can go unless you're in the Great Plains, perhaps, and there's wide open space every which way you look. Here on a mountain, in a private property, aiming downward as the hill goes down toward Saudi Daisy, there's only so far you can go. And so there was plenty of cover for these officers. Now, we don't know, of course, the details of who was in a car and which officers had dismounted, gotten out of their cars with their weapons drawn to protect the public. But somehow, one officer, I'm not sure if it was the man from Red Bank who fired the shot or another one, one officer is hit by the car, which is being controlled by Donna Allen, who's trying to get away, right? She's trying to get away. A misdemeanor at best. The most she has done is commit a misdemeanor. And it is really just these traffic offenses are civil. These are civil offenses for which there is the operation of police power to compel cooperation with the court. Right? These are quasi-criminal, quasi-civil dealings that you have with the state. They are in equity. They're equitable dealings. They're civil, contractual dealings, right? Effectively, because you are approaching the state for a commercial permit and permission and privilege. So there's a commercial business connection with the state that she had. And so here the officer enforcing that has this lethal force power that he is going to enforce against her. And the number is 800-8949, 800-8949. And my name is David Toulis. And we're asking, why did the officer not use cover? If you're in a forest, even though there's space between the trees enough for her, Donna Allen, to move her car about, right? Maybe throw a bit of gravel, throw a bit of pine grit at your face, perhaps, if she's spinning left and right, trying to elude you. You have a tree. And so any officer who is on his feet has trees behind which he can hide. Here, though, one officer was not behind a tree and was not using cover sufficiently. And so he was injured. Now, that injury, let me suppose here, is the probable cause for the execution that followed. Why did she have to die? Why does the Allen family now have to deal with a corpse and a funeral home and the casket expense and a medical bill, perhaps? And there was some medical care given to this woman Maybe she did not have insurance. Maybe she's on the poor side. If you look at her face on Chattanooga.com, you might surmise that she is perhaps a working woman, right? A working class person, not refined, not elevated, not pretty. She was never gifted by God's hand with a beautiful visage, a beautiful physiognomy. She doesn't have those things. She's just a very plain looking woman in the mugshot. So evidently she had a mugshot from previously, which is what John Wilson at Chattanooga.com has posted for our edification. She is dead. And why? How is it that there is a necessity in a misdemeanor case, in a misdemeanor chase, to kill someone, even though she may have hit the officer? Does not the officer care for her life? Does not the officer think that her life is worth more than his? No. David Toulis, you are mistaken. No, that is never the case. If there is a mistake to be made and a death is to be had, it is always to be upon the civilian and never upon the officer. The officer is never, ever to take a risk. He is to offload the risk upon the member of the public. Here, a woman foolishly fleeing the officers and here committing a tort. She has done a wrong against him by hitting him somehow with her bumper, either the back bumper, the front bumper. Maybe she was spinning around and he got too close and the grit thrown at him from her spinning tires, and maybe the bumper, maybe her fender bumped him in the leg and gave a nasty bruise upon him. But that is the justification for her being slain. Now, the question is the law. Does the law allow that? Well, no. The law in the statute, which is the police right to kill statute that the people and their General Assembly have passed in Tennessee, that statute does not allow that to happen. Just because you're injured by the person whom you're chasing doesn't mean that you now have a license to kill. It doesn't work that way. The justification for the killing of a person is that the person may kill you, meaning just ahead, the person may do something to kill you and you do not have a defense, or that person may go running off and kill someone else, right? If the person is a murderer or a mass murderer fleeing, that person may kill again. And so if that's the case, if it is a chase of a mass murderer, you, the officer, you, the citizen, because after all, the cop gets his authority from you, the citizenry, right? He may take that life if he believes that the suspect, the person, the fugitive, will go and kill someone else, if not stopped now, by a bullet. Now, the question that we have to ask is this: is a woman who is fleeing a misdemeanor charge, maybe a DUI charge, if she has a paper offense on her record and has unpaid fines, maybe she has, maybe she failed to yield. She failed to yield, which is the initial pretext of the aggressive encounter by the officer in Red Bank, the courageous Red Bank officer who wants to be filmed. He wants you to film him with your camera if you only could, right? If you'd only been there. Is he afraid of death? That's what I want to know. So what's going to happen now is that the TBI, the Holy of Holies, the high priesthood of government in Tennessee, will be constructing a narrative. I wish Tim Blaylock, the owner, had been a bit more gracious with me and let me go back to look at the kill spot. But he was not willing to let me do that. He was not willing to discuss really anything with me in his right to say nothing to members of the press. The press was there yesterday. Cops were there 17 or 18 hours. He said a TV station drone hovered over his lot, looking down upon him. All I had was Eloise Lee there at my side, a near neighbor up the hill a ways, and myself and my question. And I said, Mr. Blaylock, I'm here to find out the reason for this killing of this innocent person. This person did not do anything worthy of death. She was not a murderer. She had not raped anybody. She had not drowned a child. She had not strangled a dog. She had not killed a baby. She had not killed a baby, an unborn baby or a living baby outside the womb. She had done none of those things. So she's not really worthy of death. And I even may have said to him that, she's made in God's image. And so we have to look out for her interest and the interest of in the process that led to her pouring of blood there in the seat of the car. We have to find that out. And so I was trying in my free market analysis as the deacon, right, the man formerly a Presbyterian deacon, to stoke his heart to let me wander about, but he wouldn't let me. And so I really couldn't see. But we do have some sense of the terrain. If you go to Nuganomics.com, our chief sponsor, you can see a little video I made from my Hummer window as we left. I was taking Mrs. Lee back to her house on my way down the mountain. And that's where Donna Lynn Allen passed. And that's the kind of terrain in which she was killed. So just think about it, something like that, about 150 yards distant. So she got away through the forest. Clearly she's trapped. Clearly she's not going to go and kill somebody, right? She's not a fleeing felon who has committed a mass murder. She's not killed 15 people in a nursing home or run over children in a kindergarten with her car. She's not done that. So she's not fleeing for that reason, not likely to kill anybody outside of her immediate scope of influence there in that woods, that dark Tuesday morning night. And yet she is dead. And Sheriff Jim Hammond is, I would say, responsible for this because he allows it. He allows these corporations and their military organizations to chase after people. Now, let me ask you this. If a police officer chases someone past the speed limit, is that officer endangering the public? Well, the answer is yes. All right, so now we have a question of, is that really necessary to do? Must we, in a failure to yield transportation stop under Title 55, must we chase after someone for some distance up a long highway and down into a neighborhood and then fire weapons to destroy human life that is so dangerous to the officer who shall bear no risk, right? The officer shall bear no risk. He cannot bear, though he's injured, he cannot bear another moment of peril. And so that human being, Donna Lynn Allen, made in God's image, having done nothing worthy of death, is plugged with his .40 caliber, and the other bullet going into the car and hitting the man who had done nothing wrong except be a passenger, maybe encouraging the woman to press on. Maybe he was giving her bad advice. Who knows? But he is now near death too, in critical condition at Erlanger Medical Center. Sheriff Jim Hammond allowed this. Now, my name is David Toulis, and we are here at 92.7 FM Nougat Radio. You report, and the world decides. Let me know what happens. I want to hear about you. What are your problems? That's what we try to talk about here on the David Toulis Show. We want to see where the machinery that works against liberty is operating effectively. Because if it's effective, it's often illegal. Okay. If it's ineffective, it's often because it recognizes that it can only go so far. And that's what we want to try to point out. We want to point out where the operation of the good people, as I call them, is grinding away and succeeding happily in obliterating common people, destroying their rights, and making us all live in fear. That's what it's often very good at, even though we have a very rah-rah county commission, a rah-rah county mayor, rah-rah Chattanooga mayor. There is still this operation against freedom and against the poor, against common people, and really against the hope that I think makes us prosperous, the hope of the free market. Why are Marxist countries so bitterly poor? Why was the Soviet Union destined for collapse? It was because people lived in fear, and no one could generate capital. No one would take a risk. No one could think really about other people. When you have a system of socialism or Marxism, which we have here, it's hard sometimes to think graciously about customers. Even though we have Herculean Americans in Chattanooga, all across town, we have remarkable American developers and entrepreneurs, risk takers, and thinkers, doers, marketers, servants of the marketplace. So there is something to say well for the human spirit here in the Chattanooga area in Hamilton County, where we have some prosperity. But my concern is, how do we keep back and push back these other things, and we could round them up into the rubric of police abuse. How can we address that particular problem and push it back into a state of quasi or semi-impotence? That's really what we want to have. That law enforcement enforces only laws lawfully and legally, and not illegally, and not unto death. The transportation statute, Title 55, being used today in execution of a person who had a traffic offense. David Toulis, Nougat Radio.
3, 2, 1.
Chatter, Nougat Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
The brother of the former assistant police chief, Edwin McPherson, found dead in his home.